I was basically brought into digital marketing at its inception to the point that there was a plucky little startup 2 blocks away from us called Amazon that was selling books out of a small warehouse. It's about focus and prioritization and saying no to things so that you can say yes to other things. Yeah, exactly. The idea is do it when you're not on the line to sell your business, because people sell for a lot of different reasons, sometimes because they need to. You don't want to be in a situation where you've expended a lot of cost, time, and resources. And frankly, the biggest thing is just the emotional equity that you throw into getting a deal done as a founder. My mantra with clients is just this idea of progress, not perfection. Always being confident enough to hire and partner with people smarter than you in whatever it is that they're experts in.
This is the Bender CFO Podcast, where we empower business owners to gain financial clarity and maximize growth.
Hello, everyone. Today's guest is Dustin Engel, founder of Elegant Disruption and U.S. Director of WY Partners. Dustin has led strategy, growth, and M&A efforts at top firms like PMG, iProspect, and Clear Sailing, driving major successes for Fortune 500 brands and tech companies. He also helped launch major initiatives like Blockbuster Online and was a critical executive in multiple company exits. Beyond business, Dustin's passionate about giving back, having co-founded the Utah Digital Marketing Collective and served on the board of Equip the Saints. A graduate of Seattle University and executive education from Harvard Business School and Singularity University, Dustin is a recognized expert and frequent speaker at top industry events. Welcome to the show, Dustin. Glad you could be here. How you doing today?
Thanks for having me. Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, just to add a little more, Dustin, I had an opportunity to work with Dustin at iProspect and a little bit in some other, since I've started my fractional CFO business 9 years ago. And what makes Dustin unique to even from other guests is that he has a very strong focus with working with marketing agencies, a ton of experience specific in that industry. And I do a lot of work specific to fractional CFO work for marketing agencies. So it's a nice collaborative effort. And I think that you're going to find tremendous value in what he has to say, especially if you're a marketing agency or anybody in the tech related industry. And he'll talk a lot more about that. But Justin, just start off with what inspired you to build Elegant Disruption. Hey guys, I've worked with marketing agencies for over 20 years. Have you ever wanted to know some key metrics that you should look for as a marketing agency? Have you ever wanted to understand how to forecast your agency better in the sense where you hit the key metrics, the gross margin, the operating margin, different revenue per person metrics, whatever you would need to be the most successful and hit your goals? To add value. So we have the ultimate guide for financial forecasting for marketing agencies. It's free, really. You just need to click on the QR code, go to the URL, type your name and email, and you can download this free guide. It's not very long, 10 pages, but it gives you some insights that you can find valuable in helping to do a forecast and understand whether you're hitting the metrics you need to hit. So check out this guide. Would love to have a conversation with you if you have more questions.
Yeah, basically after 20, 25 plus years of working in marketing. So, kind of backstory, in college, I was in Seattle. I had the kind of opportunity to get a mentor through an official mentor program at Seattle University, who was one of the early folks at Microsoft. So he had become an angel investor around town. So I was basically brought into digital marketing at its inception to the point that there was a plucky little startup 2 blocks away from us called Amazon that was selling books out of a small warehouse. And over my journey, I've worked on client side, agency side, tech side. And really, as I progressed, pre-pandemic for a few years, I was focused on M&A, working at PMG. And there I just had the opportunity to meet with a lot of agency founders, a lot of tech founders. And in that situation, I realized that there is a lot of consistencies in terms of opportunities and challenges that agencies especially were going through. And there was a lot of things that were unique. And so as I was going through it and starting to get a pulse on what are those types of things that, myself as a buyer was interested in outside of the financials, as well as what I would have imagined other buyers were interested in was this whole concept of what are those things that are actually root cause to create enterprise value, and enterprise value being the symptom. And so then I spent a little bit more time thinking about that, kind of thought about frameworks that could impact enterprise value. And I realized that no matter what you do, whether it's financial services, whether it's running media programs, there's tradecraft and there's the ability to create frameworks and process things that are going to make you more successful in solving complex problems. So I realized this whole idea of enterprise value creation is actually tradecraft. And then I took that into an idea of enterprise value optimization, which is basically how do you create enterprise value, but in by doing that, you're actually creating a healthier business. So even if a sale is not imminent, it's still something you can do. And then you had the kind of the timing, which is 2020, the pandemic. I had spent 10, 15 years on the road, wanted to spend more time with my family. So it was a good opportunity to just make a life change. And then all the stars aligned. And that's how Elegant Disruption was born.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I tell you what, just in what you said, you can definitely, I can hear that Harvard education. No, so I can hear the education of just all your experience and being able to think through, yeah, as you were calling it, tradecraft, which I don't know if I've actually used that word ever in my life, but that's great. That makes a
Yeah.
lot of sense. A unique proposition, unique goal. Yeah, and M&A, I think in tech companies and in marketing firms, just the whole idea of increasing the value of the company so that you could be acquirable and acquirable at the highest value is hugely important. And it seems like in my conversations, a lot of the owners are thinking about that. So this
Yeah.
is good. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
I'll also say too that pretty much all of my roles have been in strategy, and that I've been responsible for creating something new that wasn't existing before. And the thing that I realized over time is that people's perception of strategy is just that you come up with big ideas, right? But what you actually realize is strategy is no different than any other expertise. You need a process, you need frameworks, you need a way of going about it. And so what I figured out is these things that have actually worked for me in creating businesses and creating businesses within businesses, that that tradecraft and that process of how I go about it is something that's valuable to companies that struggle with coming up with strategies,
Right.
prioritizing, figuring out how to implement and execute. So
Yeah. Well, that's hugely valuable. Well, tell me a little bit about WY Partners. How's that fit into what you're
yeah,
doing now?
WY Partners is an M&A advisory based in London, and I had the opportunity to work with them when I was on the corporate M&A side. And so when I started this business, I tend to work with companies where their exit is probably north of 2 to 3 years out. So I'm really working with them on a lot of foundational things before they're actually ready to go to market. However, in working with clients from that point, being able to transition them into transactional advisory services with a firm that I've worked with that I trust and I know does good work and creates valuable exits for founders. It's just a logical transition of making sure that I can carry my clients all the way through the process to exit.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. As we're talking about strategy and M&A activity and bringing in increased value, what the greatest value that you see with marketing agencies and martech companies? We just mentioned that before. What really helps them maximize their multiple basically and when they
Yeah.
sell? Yeah.
Yeah. I would say that kind of my superpower and that of the superpower of my company is that I'm very atypical in the M&A space, and that most folks going into M&A are coming from a financial or investment banking background. I
Mm.
come at it from an operator and having learned a lot of the financial and investment banking aspects of the role. And so with
Yeah.
that, the thing that ends up being the superpower is one, being able to properly analyze the outcome, but having the operational expertise and kind of working within the businesses that we're talking about and being able to build successful businesses within businesses there's an operational aspect of that, which means that the recommendations are all very practical. They're very contextual to the client. So being able to read the differences between one agency and another and where their strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats exist, that ends up being really valuable, because then what you're doing is you're not giving clients a blanket recommendation that you would give to 20 others. You're actually giving them a specific and bespoke recommendation that's unique to their business. And so that's the one
Yeah.
thing that we always talk about, which is making sure that when you're trying to think about how to improve your enterprise value, you're
Hmm.
not trying to do everything at the same time. It's about focus and prioritization and saying no to things so that you can say
Yeah.
yes to other things. So that's one thing that I think
Yeah.
ends up being really valuable, is making sure that you're not spending time on the wrong things is probably the easiest
Yeah.
win.
I know. It just seems like such a relatively simple concept, but very hard for people to do. They just want to do everything or be able to say they do everything, meet all the needs. But yeah, you have to be able to determine where is your big niche and where's your focus and where you add the most value. So yeah, saying no to things. I like this thing called the whole elimination, automation, delegation thought process when you're trying to think of your work. And I think you can do it in business. So you got to eliminate what's not useful, not helpful, what's a waste of time. Then you try to automate things through processes, and obviously technology can do that.
Yeah.
And then of course, then it's just delegating, having the right team that you can come around you. So I
Yeah.
like that concept.
And the real funny thing is, and this is what I did not expect when I started the business, is that immediately with clients, one thing that I usually find as a quick win is they'll say, hey, we have these 10 strategies that we've tried to implement to no success. And then when you break down, like, what are the things that are actually going to create the most enterprise value, you bring those insights back to the client. And then you realize that in some of those things that they know they should say no to, there's a lot of emotional equity built in those. There's a lot of sweat equity. Somebody spent a lot of time
Mm.
thinking through it. And sometimes those things are hard to let go. So that's also the benefit of being an external consultant, is giving them objectivity
Yeah.
and being able to say, hey, this isn't the right thing for you to focus on right now because, and just them getting that kind of third party validation of, yeah, I know this isn't the right thing, but I need to be able to explain why. That's something that's actually a quick win and generally very helpful. So
Yeah.
that kind of
I can
goes
see
to,
that. Yeah, I can
yeah, it
see
kind of
that.
goes to your business as well. Is what is the benefit of having an external advisor? In a lot of ways, it's purely around objectivity and that entity not having emotional attachment to strategies, and then
Mhm.
being able to look at it objectively.
Yeah. No, you're right. It is that external objectivity can go a long way. And sometimes just that expert and knowledge and working with other companies just has a lot of impact with people to get everybody on the same page. Yeah, I get it. Tell us a little bit about some key industry trends that you think we should be paying attention to these days.
Yeah, so the biggest trend, and this is not going to be any surprise right now, is artificial intelligence. And the way that I look at it and how I'm working through it with clients currently is the idea that businesses need to be AI natives. I'm basically recommending by the end of 2025, your business should be AI native.
What is
And
that?
so,
What is that? What's
yeah, so it's two things. There's a quick win, which is things that should be done within the first quarter of activating the strategy, which is there should be universal proficiency across the organization. And so, what I kind of recommend as a litmus test is that across the organization, whether you're in finance and accounting, client services, media, creative, you should be comfortable and expect that you're going to have AI be omnipresent in your
hmm
day-to-day activities. Now, those can be very tactical support activities, such as I'm going to have AI transcribe my calls and generate email summaries, or I'm going to
hmm
have it help me create, do research for a client, things like that. But generally,
Yeah.
like, everybody should be used to having their own assistant on whatever it is they do from a day to day. So that's
Mm.
something that I recommend doing quickly. And
Just to take this
yeah,
to like a real practical level, like what would you do, or like how would you tell people to do that on a daily basis to add that habit into their normal routine, that kind of thing?
so the first thing I do, especially if I'm doing coaching with key people within the organization, I ask them with any question they give me, I ask them, how can you resolve that through AI? So it's basically not giving them an avenue to answer a question without AI being like the first thing that they should think about.
Right.
And I recommend that as an organizational kind of culture shift. So starting with leadership should be asking, that's a great question. How are you going to use AI to answer that? So just
Mm.
basically force people to think through that. The second piece is getting basic tools that are in a lot of use right now: ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude. People getting used to using those for work purposes.
Hmm.
Obviously, in those recommendations, you're very clear about things that you should do for work on, say, a personal versus enterprise account, just to maintain data security and confidentiality. But nevertheless, just getting people comfortable with that. And then the third piece is, and this is something that's been great, is getting them comfortable with training their own AI assistants. So
Mm.
giving folks a recipe on how would you actually train, say, a custom GPT to do a specific thing that you need as part of your job, giving them a recipe
Okay.
for how you would actually create the instructions to do that. And the reason why that's important is
Yeah.
that when somebody's actually creating and training AI, I've found that their knowledge of how to use it accelerates exponentially, because now they have an idea of, if you get a response, how can you solve that? If it's a response that doesn't work, you can either coach the response like in the actual conversation itself through a different prompt. But when you actually get them to think about, how can I retrain the assistant to answer that in a different way, it just unlocks their thinking on how this works, which basically gets them to think about an AI assistant of any type the same way they would think about, I'm a manager and I need to be able to coach my employee to do the job that I need them to do.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great.
So that's the
Yeah, I know.
quick.
AI has definitely been the topic, and the topic
Yeah.
for sure. I like that advice, and the idea of creating your own GPT seems a little. But I mean, I use ChatGPT generally, but they made it easier to start doing that. It's good.
Yeah. And that's, for me, that's how I got extremely comfortable with it. Now, that's a quick win of just people using existing tool sets and existing GPT frameworks. The one that's really interesting to me, and what I think is really just the concept of AI native, is this kind of systemic AI as policy. And
Hmm.
one thing that it's been in the past month, but Shopify, their CEO sent an email out to the organization talking about how AI is going to be policy. And there was a lot of different aspects of it, such as in your performance reviews, you're going to be reviewed on your usage of AI. But there was a
Mm.
couple that actually really stood out to me. The first one was, before you can make a request for additional headcount, you have to explain how this can't be done by AI.
Wow, that's an interesting
Yes.
question. Yeah.
So if you're a hiring manager, all of a sudden you now have this roadblock of, if I want to hire somebody, I'm going to have to prove that AI can't do it. And then the other piece that I thought was interesting was that everyone means everyone. So the point being is that executives, leadership, they have to be AI natives in order for
Hmm.
the organization to be AI natives, which I think is an important point.
I'm gonna be like, I just kind of think, how would you be able to prove that AI couldn't do it? Because you like don't always know. You just do a little research, and some
Mm.
people think AI can do everything, but there's this little technically, if it's programmed and organized, it can do a lot. But there's always these disconnects. Like, as I think about in what I
Mhm.
do as CFO services, it's like I tend to use AI for decision making type things, like thinking of different ideas, whether it be cost saving measures or just some certain strategies. With I actually did it this last week on more of a different cash funding it was basically ways to help fund the situation that they need some debt financing. And I just was trying to think of some creative things that maybe I hadn't thought of. And actually, believe it or not, it did. I thought of most of the things it came up with, but there was a couple of things like, okay, that's interesting. But it was either just having that, like that kind of a thought partner to think through things. But yeah,
For
that's
sure.
great. That's great. But what does it mean by I have a note here. It says agility as a response to uncertainty. What does that mean?
Yeah. So basically, with kind of the buzzword right now is uncertainty, and companies are
Hmm.
having to deal with an unpredictable path forward in a lot of different ways. And I think the one trend is, from CEOs down, is they're really focused on agility. So things that they can basically adapt and move quickly and respond to quickly, that's becoming paramount. So that means that they're looking at a lot of their software investments, they're looking at human capital, they're looking at the ability, like even things such as real estate leases, things like that. They're just trying to create as much agility and the ability to pivot so that either they can take advantage of opportunities that present themselves in the uncertainty and also protect themselves from an operating standpoint with the uncertainty. I think it's just what people want right now in running their business is just finding any and all opportunities to create more agility, not make long-term decisions, just create the ability to potentially make long-term decisions if they need to.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And then, as I mentioned before, and people who listen to the podcast know, that's what I do, fractional CFO work. I've been
Yeah.
doing that for quite a while and have over 20 years working in finance and accounting, specifically a lot of experience with marketing agencies. But like, we talked a lot about M&A, you've talked a lot about you trying to increase the value of their firm or their company or agency. So tell us, what makes a partnership with other types of financial professionals? What makes it really work well and thrive?
Yeah. Having an advisor, a financial advisor for your business it creates structure, and ultimately the financials are the receipt of a lot of the work that I do. So having good structure, the ability to have a solid financial plan for the business, the ability to report on financial performance, that receipt allows somebody like me to be able to see where there's opportunities, see where there's inefficiencies, and that will actually lend itself to where my focus would be from a consulting standpoint on improving kind of the root causes that lead to that financial performance. So
Yeah.
I think clients that and I think this kind of goes the case for any kind of fractional support.
Hmm.
Not every client can afford a C-level executive for every facet of the business. So the
Right.
ability to use a fractional resource to get the highest quality output you can for a business need, it just creates a lot more flexibility and it creates a higher performing business. You get a lot of opportunity to be able to get the best of the best on a way that's going to work for your business. And then I
Right.
think, and one client I work with, I'm one of four fractional executives that they have working for them. And we all work in great partnership with each other. We all support the business very well. And it's just a great
Mhm.
situation for the client because they get this really strong bench of resources on their budget and that are being very productive.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. Is I'll go in there and I'll work with the company, and the first thing I like to do is make sure they have a good forecast model. Do they understand how they're earning their revenue? Just with an agency language, we'll use service oriented or agencies. Hey, what are your existing contracts? What's your current run rate with what you're doing now? Believe it or not, some people don't even really look at that. And then the pipeline, what's in the pipeline? If they think that they're going to grow 30 or 40% and they have no pipeline, well, okay, that's not might not be very logical. Just try to think through why you
Right.
have not a very big pipeline of opportunities. And that usually means that, hey, let's bring in somebody that might help you in that department. I know we're specifically looking at an opportunity with one of my clients where they're having some challenges in that area, but you don't know, is it a problem specifically with the sales? Is it a problem, bigger strategic problem? And so that's where, hey, that's really not, I can kind of see there's an issue, but I'm like, huh, I think we need to get an expert in this area. And that's the beauty of what I do is I can see the financial picture and bring people in, such as someone like you, to help in that area, the areas where I definitely don't know.
Yeah, and a logical analogy of that is like healthcare, right? Where
Yeah,
basically the goal is comprehensive health, where you're healthy on all fronts. But in order to do that, you're going to need specialists, right? Like you're going to need
right.
people that specialize in certain aspects of health in order to bring the whole kind of comprehensive health package together.
Yeah. And kind of, if you think about it, if you want to grow your agency to a point that you want to prepare, be acquired, if you have people around you to think through this before going through the whole due diligence process, I could see it being highly valuable. Is there any other strategic advice that you might consider around with an agency that might want to grow or prepare for an acquisition?
Yeah, one thing that I recommend, and this is something that I do in partnership with WY Partners, is we'll actually run a due diligence process when you're not on the line for
Oh,
selling your
wow.
business. So we'll actually do that process. So that way, if you do that, say 3 years before you're ready to transact, you're already going to know like all of the potential, the things that you're going to want to accentuate, and also the things
Right.
that might come up as flags, and then those can be addressed so that way you have a much better ability to have a seamless
Uh,
transaction.
that sound. I'm just thinking of some of the clients I work with that could be overwhelmed by such an activity. But it's good you're doing it before. It's
Yeah, you know what
definitely
though?
less expensive than doing a due diligence and paying all of the attorney fees and whatever other experts. Sometimes you got to pay for accountants and tax people, different people to pay. Who knows? It'll be six figures or up to six figures, and then it doesn't go through. So.
Yeah, exactly. The idea is do it when you're not on the line to sell your business, because people sell their businesses for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes because they need to. You don't want to be in a situation where you've expended a lot of cost, time, and resources. And frankly, the biggest thing is just the emotional equity that you throw into getting a deal done as a founder. Do it when that is not, you're not under pressure. So that way you
Yeah,
can be more objective, figure out, okay, that makes sense, that doesn't make sense, as opposed to
yeah.
having such emotional tie to the due diligence process.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think I've heard stories of people. It's like you get down to the end, and it's like it becomes a very emotional. You could literally be a logical check all the boxes, but it becomes this emotional thing at the very end, and that sometimes
Absolutely.
can kill the whole thing
Absolutely.
if you're not
Yeah.
prepared for that. Yeah, I get it. I get it. That's cool. So tell me a little bit about you personally. You've led some high impact initiatives, some corporate nonprofit missions. What keeps you motivated in your work today?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and this is just my mantra with clients, is just this idea of progress, not perfection. I apply that to myself. So the thing that I really love about what I do is I'm tasked with clients to help them understand intricacies of their business, but also emerging trends and how they can apply that to their business. So for me, being a continuous learner, it really it brings me joy every day, because every day I know I'm going into work, and I'm going to be expanding my knowledge alongside my clients. The other, what keeps me motivated as well, is it's an honor with my clients to be able to allow them to take some of the pressure off themselves and realize you're not going to be perfect. Your company is not going to be perfect. It's about the journey. So this concept of progress, not perfection, being able to
Mhm.
have a being able to have that click on with a type A founder who always feels like they have to be perfect all the time. That's something that gives me a lot of joy, is just letting, when when you can see the pressure come off of them and say, yeah, I get it. We'll figure this out. It's just not going to
Yeah,
happen immediately. That's a great feeling, because you realize how alone founders can feel at the top, and the feeling of having to be perfect all the time. That's something that
right.
actually creates a lot of joy.
Reminds me of that book, The Gap versus the Gain. I can't remember who wrote it off the top of my head, but it's just sort of like people tend to focus, especially if you're type A or owner, it's like what you focus on the gap where you haven't actually hit the goals or you haven't gotten there. And especially if you're a strong visionary, you're probably never
Hmm.
there because you're just way, ahead. But you're not, you should spend some time focusing on the gain, what you've accomplished, what you've already.
Yeah.
what's worked, what the wins that have happened in the
Yeah.
last quarter or year or something like that. So that's great. Kind of last question, what kind of helps you personally measure and define success in your business and in your life?
Yeah, I would say the biggest measurement of success is just creating a successful home and family. And I think that starts with doing work that I'm proud of and working with clients that I enjoy working with, because all of that kind of feeds into how you're going to be in the house. And so
Mhm.
I think that's been something I was hoping for in starting this company, but has really blossomed is that it's really just created a lot of success at home. And
Yeah.
just so I think that's ultimately the goal, creating wins for clients that they can be proud of, especially kind of things that they maybe didn't think was something that their company could do. So helping them
Mhm.
unlock something, that's a point of joy. And then for me, and this kind of goes with not just employees, but also with people that I partner with, like folks like you, is always being confident enough to hire and partner with people smarter than you in whatever it is that they're experts in. I think that's something that a lot of folks struggle with, and something that I kind of realized over my career created a lot of my success is just always being comfortable hiring people smarter than me, and basically just figuring out how to eliminate roadblocks or give them something that they need to be successful. That is something that I kind of treat as a litmus test of not just for me, but something I also coach my clients on is, if you're going to make a hire, is this somebody who is actually better than you at that thing that you're hiring them to do? And
Yeah.
that's a great conversation to have with a client, especially when they latch onto it.
Yeah, no, that's great. I've heard that. So it almost sometimes initially when you hear it, at least the first time, it didn't make sense. Like, why do you want a bunch of people that are smarter than you? But then in reality, if you think through people are really smart in different areas. You can't possibly be smart in all these areas. And this is why I'd like to do in this interview series, because this is going to be the 12th interview with experts that are in areas that they all help small businesses, everyone in different areas. We've talked to tax experts, we talked to insurance experts, coaches, financial advisors, and personal investment financial advisors. We talked to all these different people, different types of marketing agencies focused on different things. It's just like everybody is good in all these areas, and we can't possibly be good in all of it. And so, yeah, you want to hire the right people, and especially in specific areas where they can help you grow. And so that's great. I really have enjoyed this conversation. Dustin,
Likewise.
any last minute thoughts or you want to share?
No, just I'd say one, thank you for the opportunity to do this. This was a fun conversation on my end as well. And really excited for the work that you're doing, and always enjoy working with you on clients.
Yeah, no, it's been great, Dustin. I got a lot of great advice from, I'm sure everyone, if you went all the way to the end of this episode, you got some great advice and knowledge from an expert in working with marketing agencies, tech, MarTech, different, just especially M&A knowledge. There's so much there that you have to know to really maximize your value. And so anyways, good conversation, Dustin. Thanks for being on the show.
Likewise. Thanks, Shane.
Thanks so much for listening to the Bender CFO podcast. Help us out by subscribing on YouTube so you don't miss another episode, or listen to us on Spotify and rate us 5 stars so more people can get this content to help their businesses grow and be successful.